we wanted Iran. We want North Korea to give up their pursuit of nuclear weapons. Whether that's realistic or not at this point is another discussion. But that's our goal. We did from every president. We wanted Iran to give up their pursuit of nuclear weapons.
Yes.
Okay. Now Iran did
exactly
what North Korea has not done, and we got this deal with Iran, and then he wants to rip it up.
Right.
What's the logic of this?
None whatsoever. The Iran deal is a model of what you'd like to get with North Korea. If we could get North Korea to do what Iran did, we would declare victory. We would be
for 15
thrilled.
years, right?
Strict limits on 15 years, but rolling back their program, they ripped out their centrifuges. They took the core of their plutonium production reactor, drilled it full of holes, filled it with concrete, shipped out the uranium. You have to understand this. They destroyed billions of dollars of nuclear production capability. They said it was peaceful. They said it was for fuel, but it could be used for build bombs. Rolled everything back and then opened up their facilities to the strictest international inspections ever negotiated. Yes, there are some problems. We didn't get everything we wanted, but you could build on the deal. You could have supplemental agreements. You could have a follow-on agreement. You don't like that it expires in 15 years? Fine. Let's negotiate a deal for what happens in 15 years. But that's not what Trump is going to do.
No, and here's what he says about the deal. Again, this is the same thing he said all during the campaign.
Yeah.
The Iran deal was one of the worst and most one-sided transactions the United States has ever entered into. Frankly, that deal is an embarrassment to the United States, and I don't think you've heard the last of it. Believe me.
Believe me. Yeah. First of all, why is it a one-sided deal?
Well, of course it's not. It's a seven-sided deal. Remember, this is not a deal. And this is what he does. He doesn't even understand. I doubt very much that if you asked Donald Trump to describe a feature of the deal, he could not. He doesn't get it. As you know.
He probably also doesn't know what other countries have signed on.
His staff says he won't read more than half a memo. Okay, this is a 140-page deal. Yeah, do you think this man read past a page? I don't think he's even looked at it. Anyway, this is a deal that negotiated with our allies, with the European Union. Our closest allies are in on this deal, support the deal, are writing to him. I know. I was up in the United Nations on Monday. I had dinner with President Rouhani of Iran and several, and he had just met with Macron, who had just met with Trump, the French President Macron. Macron is trying to get the president to stay with it. All our European allies, because this is a good deal. This solves the problem, at least for as far into the future as anybody can see, a good 15 years. So he's rejecting that. He's rejecting the international instruments. He's rejecting something that was passed by the UN Security Council and endorsed, that's being enforced by the International Atomic Energy Agency. He's just throwing all that aside. He's not alone. There's Bibi. That is the only world leader who supports what Trump is doing. Not even the Saudis want him to tear up this deal.
Right. So this deal comes up for what, renewal or something?
Well,
because Rex Tillerson is having a meeting today, I want to ask you about, in New York.
The first one that he's going to attend.
On the Iran deal. Now, he said something yesterday again. It's almost like Paris. We want to renegotiate it. Here's Rex Tillerson.
It's not a stiff enough agreement. It doesn't slow their program enough, and holding them accountable is difficult under the agreement. But most importantly, the agreement comes to an end, and so we can almost start the countdown clock as to when they will resume their nuclear weapons capability.
Well, what does he mean by that? First of all, Rex Tillerson, I don't think he's read it either, by the way, but what does he mean it comes to an end? When?
Talk about bullying. This is a man who's been beaten into submission by Trump. He was started out strongly in favor of this deal, arguing in the private sessions, you got to keep this, as has Secretary of Defense Mattis. All the national security team want to keep the deal. They've now been bullied by the president into these kinds of statements. It's absolute nonsense. It's completely untrue. The expert consensus, the global consensus, is exactly the opposite of what Tillerson is saying. What he means is that in 15 years, most of the limits come off. They could build more centrifuges, for example, but they're still banned from building any nuclear weapons. We still track it. The inspections stay there. If they were to try to start building nuclear weapons, we would know it almost immediately and could take new action. And of course, you're going to have supplemental agreements. So for the first time this week, Tillerson's going to meet down with his counterparts. All the nations who negotiated this deal meet to review the progress of the deal. And if there are problems, there are mechanisms for fixing this. If there really were violations, as Trump claims, there's a mechanism for correcting those. But we haven't brought any of that to this body. Why? Because it's not true. It's just a rhetorical point. It's not an actual point. Iran is living up to the deal. But here's what happens. The congressional legislation that sort of validated the deal requires that every 90 days the president certify that Iran is complying with the deal.
Got it.
So when that happened last time in July, the president didn't want to do it. His entire national security team were baffled by this. They said, you have to. The intelligence agencies agree Iran is complying with the deal. He said he didn't want to do it. Okay, then he agreed to do it this time. He didn't want to do it next time. And so October 14th, he's probably going to announce that he's not going to certify Iran's compliance. That starts a congressional clock. Congress then has a 60-day window in which they can reimpose sanctions. If they do that, that breaks the deal. The whole thing shatters.
That breaks the deal for the United States. Does the whole deal shatter? Did the other country, would Iran, then Iran would say, well, hell with it, right?
Well, then Iran's in the catbird seat, as we said.
Right.
As I say, I had dinner with President Rouhani on Monday, and he was talking about, Iran's sort of options at that point. They could stay in the deal with the Europeans, and it would be the U.S. that would be isolated, or they would be free to pursue their nuclear program again without any constraints whatsoever. The sanctions mechanism would be shattered because the U.S. had broken out, and they'd be in their legal rights to kick out the inspectors and do whatever they want. So if Trump does what he wants to do, Iran wins.
Right.